Hello, thank you for joining us. Today we have author Christina Adams and mom and a superhero in the camel world, right? So we're here to discuss camel milk and her book, Camel Crazy. Hi, Christina. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Denise. Happy to be here today.
Good. So funny story, we already had this interview and it didn't get recorded. So we're going to do it again just for you guys. We're pretty excited about the camel milk and spreading the word. So this has to be put out there. So here we go again. Thank you for your patience, Christina, for going through this once more with me.
You know, I think in life, a lot of good comes from emulating the camel who can go very far distances under challenging conditions to deliver the goods. So
I love
we're going to do that today.
I love that. Okay, great. Okay, so Christina not only has a son on the spectrum, but she has traveled the world and gone to great lengths to bring camel's milk and its notoriety and its information and everything about it here to us. And so today she's going to share with us some of the benefits of camel milk. We're going to kind of get into some of the story about how this even came to be. So Christina, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you go ahead and open up by sharing how in the heck did camels come into your world?
Camels and me were never a foredestined conclusion, but now here we are. I'm the author of Camel Crazy, as you said, and I do speak and lecture and write about camel milk. So that happened because I had a son with autism after I'd had a career, which involved me working with the Pentagon and aerospace and things like that. So I had a son and he was diagnosed with autism. And so that's when I kind of did a turn, and as happens to parents, we just have to go in that direction. So I started researching biology and diet and things like that, and all of which were important to help him function very well. So I ran that whole intervention program for him, and then that's what the subject of my first book, A Real Boy, A True Story of Autism, Early Intervention, and Recovery, is about. And so right after that book came out, a few months, then I was at a book festival in Orange County, California, where I live, and I saw a camel, and my son was reading a book, and I was pretty bored, and I just thought, I'll go over and see what that camel's doing here, because I haven't really spent much time around a camel. So I stared at the camel, and then I saw a guy with he was selling soaps and lotions under a tent. So I walked over and I said, hey, so what else did they do with this milk? And who knows why I asked that. I was really bored. I'm a journalist type of person, so I don't know. And he said, well, they give it to premature infants in hospitals in the Middle East because it's thought to be non-allergenic. And some people think it's close to human breast milk. And that was that light bulb moment. All that past research I had done and experience on dairy and autism and things like that, it just came to me that camel milk might help his immune system function better, sort of reboot it, and that always affects his autism symptoms. And so that was my first instinct. And then the second one, almost at the same time, would be a great dairy substitute for people like him that cannot have regular dairy, because I already knew that cow milk made my son hand flap, toe walk, and kind of zone out, walk in circles. And once he got better, because he lost his language, and then I had to run the intervention program, and then he got a lot better. But then once he got better, I remember he ate pizza with the cheese scraped off about 3 times in a row. I'd gotten kind of cocky and thought, oh, it was an accident the first time. It didn't seem to affect him. So then he started hand flapping and toe walking and going in circles. And I said, what are you doing? And he's like, it's like there's dirt in my brain. And so I thought, okay, obviously this, whatever the cheese were, still did this to him. So that's where we were at that time. When I met the camel, we went home. I started looking on the computer. There was about 0 information. There were just some weird articles about it helping heal wounds in Russia back in the day, and that you can't make cheese out of camel milk because it doesn't coagulate like other milks. But I didn't give up. And a few months later, I came across an article by an Israeli scientist and another Israeli scientist that partnered with him. And they had given camel milk to children with autism in Israel, and they got better. And then also they had done a thing about food allergies. The paper said that the children with food allergies had gotten better too. So there we go. I was on the right path.
Yeah. So look at that. Mom's intuition right there. Says, I mean, I don't know if you guys we're from Orange County here. So it's not every day you see a camel in Orange County. So, but it very interestingly how you connected the dot. You saw the camel and they had camel milk soap, and you know, being into just questioning and asking questions. I mean, I just think the story is so cool. It's so amazing how this all transpired. So from there, so now you're curious, you got on the Google, and like we talked about before, back then there was not any information to be found on camel's milk, certainly not for any kind of treatment to autism or improving autism symptoms or any kind of immune boosting, no, nothing like that, right? So
Right.
you continued on your search, curious, but so this was months later that you are still thinking about this camel milk, which I think, again, is interesting because it's one thing to that day be like, gosh, that was so weird. I saw a camel and, camels have milk? Like, you know, I know your brain was like, kind of like, what? And then you didn't find any information. And most people would have just been like, that was a thought and moved on. But you did not. So tell us a little more about how you progressed into, you know, actually finding camel's milk and getting it here to the US. So let's tell that story.
So at that time, the quest for camels and camel milk was, you know, sheerly a castle in the air, as they used to call it back. Just something in your mind that you hope could happen. And so I wrote a site that I saw that sold livestock in the Midwest or something that said something about a camel. They never wrote me. I didn't know one that had any animals that. But then I just started talking to people that I knew, and my friends, a new friend was a Pakistani American man, and I think I'm going to Israel. Maybe I can get you some back. This is after talking for a while, but then he had the chance to go to Israel, and so he to Israel. And then I remember sitting at around County here in Newport Beach, actually, and he calls me, "Hey, good news! I got some camel." Yes, news. They threw it away at JFK Airport. I was like, no, but he said, "But I got a phone number for you." So I called over to Israel, talked to one person, was given to another person who didn't speak English, was given to another person. Turned out he's an Israeli-American scientist and a cancer researcher, brilliant guy. So that we formed this partnership. We kept talking by Skype, you know, over a series of months. And then finally, after I did my due diligence, we made all these kind of theories because he knew about camel milk and I knew about autism. So we put it together, and then I smuggled some frozen bottles of camel milk in from the Bedouins in the desert, Israel. And that was one miracle. And I kept getting more and stockpiling it and getting ready to give it to my son. And it wasn't money. And every time it had to travel so far. I had to travel from the desert and then the freezer that it had gone in, and then pick it up, bring it to the airport. That flight, very long, I don't know, 14 and a half, 16 hours, whatever. And then I'd go pick it up in LA and truck down to OC, and there it was, frozen hard as a rock, with even a little desert dust sprinkled on it.
Okay, so from there, so now you've done months of speaking back and forth and getting some research behind it and doing your due diligence and trying to figure out if this is something you want to try. Meanwhile, you're stockpiling and getting some camel's milk in, and then you decide you're going to give it a try. Now, how did you feel were you nervous about giving it a try, or were you at that point thinking this is really going to, and on that note, what did you think was going to be the result of giving your son this camel's milk?
Well, with all the effort that it took to get that darn milk in and worry over it and, you know, stockpiling it, I loved having it. It was kind of like Fort Knox to me, you know, bricks of milk rather than gold. But did I know for sure what it was going to do? No, but I knew by then that some people in Israel were using it for Crohn's disease and it was helping them. And so I thought, well, that's something there. And so by the time I was trying to get some data, because I try to do things rather scientifically. So I was trying to get some data, but he had lost behavioral therapy. He didn't have it anymore because he was doing very well. But I wanted to get some back. So I was trying to get more therapy back so I could kind of do a double, well, it wasn't double blind, but, you know, like a little bit of a blinded thing where I would give him that, but they wouldn't know. So they could give me unbiased input. But I couldn't get it in time. And he started going backwards. And our children, their biochemistry changes here and there as they get older, and they can go up and down. So he was starting to do things that were rather dangerous again. And so I got desperate. And by that time, I just was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So bought a bottle of camel milk, which was a big step to thaw that. Like, was really, wow, here I am to the moment of seeing if it's going to do anything or not. And then I gave him 4 ounces at bedtime and cereal. And the next day, he was just so different. It was incredible.
So I'm going to stop you there because that is one of my favorite parts in the book. So if you guys haven't heard Camel Crazy, amazing book. Not only is it super informative about the benefits of camel milk, but also the adventure of how Christina got the milk, what prompted the thing. It's a great story. But my favorite part is when Christina tries it out and gives it to her son in that cereal and what happens the next morning. So Christina, please share with everybody your experience that morning at the breakfast table.
Well, I had been a single mom when this whole thing started. I'd just become a single mom. So my life was very exhausting. And lucky for me, just before this happened, I met a wonderful man who made the very brilliant move of dating an autism mom by offering to come over and help her child get ready in the morning for school. So that is a brilliant idea for anyone that wants to court us. And so he was there the night before, and he's the one that said, why don't you just give him this milk finally? Obviously things are going backwards. And I said, okay, I will. So he came over the next morning, as he did. And he, he's like, I want to go upstairs and check on him. And then he's like, he says he'll be ready in a minute. And I think to myself, not going to be ready in a minute. He's never ready in a minute, like ever. But I thought, okay, I'll give him a shot. Because he said, he says he'll be ready. So then he came down the stairs and he wasn't dragging his feet like usual. But, that's just one good thing. But then he sat at the table, and he also would have to cut his breakfast with the knife and a fork. And motor skills are very difficult for children with autism. Motor skills are now recognized as an integrated part of some of the disabilities associated. But usually most people don't know that when it comes to diagnosing the kids. But the fine motor, which is, using your hands to do limited, things like cut, write, tie shoes, all those things, that's very difficult for many of our children. And the gross motor, moving the body around, and motor planning and things like that. So I noticed at the breakfast table, he was cutting his waffle and cutting his turkey sausage, and his knife blade wasn't slipping around like it usually did, and the syrup wasn't splashing like it usually did, and I didn't have to, try to, cut it so it could, not slip all over the place. And that was kind of amazing. And then he started talking, and he did speak, and he spoke well, but there were always still little gaps that I noticed. And so he said things. He started saying, gosh, you really do so much for me. I really love you. You make my food, you make my medicine. Wow. And it was just very calm. He was very calm too. That was another thing. Very calm. He wasn't rolling his head around on his collar, or being all goofy, or he also had a little bit better eye contact. And he then got down when he was done, and he put on his own shoes, which was a big deal. And he picked up his own backpack, which is another big deal. So good motor planning, executive function would be those terms. And then he said, who's taking me to school? Another question we don't normally hear. And then he said, who's picking me up? Okay, wow. So my boyfriend and I did not even look at each other during this whole thing. We didn't speak. We didn't say anything because we were both like, what's going on? We could read each other's mind like, whoa, don't touch this. We don't even know what to say. Just go with it. So he took him to school, and then he came home, and then we just stared at each other. And he's like, well, what did you think? And I'm like, what did you think? So that's when we compared notes, and it was just astonishing.
Yeah, I love that story. That's crazy. So, it just goes to show you where there's a will, there's a way, right? So you finally tried it. So now when you gave it to him, and I'm assuming there's some times where maybe he didn't get it, or did you see regression in some of his symptoms or behaviors when you removed it?
Yes, I did. So that's part of the book of Camel Crazy, where I kind of explain how this unrolled. So Camel Crazy, it's a memoir, so it's a first person story, but I also put, interesting information in it. So you can read it in a fun manner rather than like a boring science book, which nobody reads. So I did talk about how within a few days, he actually started walking across the street without me hanging onto his collar, which is something that a lot of autism parents will recognize having to do to keep them from darting or moving around. Yeah. And he was like, let go, and then he walked across the street without me having to hang on and like actually stayed with us and through a parking lot. That was amazing. And that was quick in a few days. And then I noticed in a few weeks, his skin started to clear up. He had these little white bumps under his cheeks. Under the skin of his cheeks and on the back of his arms. And there's a technical name for those, but I don't want to risk it right now saying it wrong. But slowly then over the weeks, those started to clear up. And I had thought he was controlled for inflammation. He was under the care of 2 or 3 doctors. He was, taking little small bits of medications, special diet, like everything. The yeast had been an issue, real issue, which it is in some of our autistic kids, and make goofy behaviors, all kinds of issues. So when in those few weeks, skin started to clear up, and he did not need an antifungal medication anymore. He could eat carbohydrates and things like that without turning into like the drunk frat boy who'd had a 6-pack. So like over the years that became apparent, not only did it help him like that, then when he had food infractions, it would like fix his wild behavior that would start, it would fix it within minutes, like amazing. And yeah, there were times that he would regress, but then I was able to kind of stretch it out. So Camel Crazy does have a user's guide in the back too, because I know that, like we all like the fun story, the amazing people, and like there's some great pictures in it, which you can show to the whole family, but I know what we parents want and we health people want. So in the back, there's a user's guide. It's like an index that tells you like those questions. Do I have to take it forever? How much do I take for this? What do I do if he's this? What if he's very sensitive? How can I give it? How do I store it? So, and then where do I buy it? So that's all in the back of Camel.
Yeah, I did see where you mentioned that you started your son with 4 ounces, and then when you upped it to 8 ounces, he had a little bit of an issue there. Do you want to maybe fill everybody in on how that went down?
Yeah, because back then he was sort of like patient 0 in America. Well, he was, and nobody knew how it was going to affect him. So since the adult men were using it for their Crohn's colitis issues in Israel, and they were using 8 ounces a day, and Dr. Gonen and I, my friend that I was, doing all this science hypothesis with and helped me get the milk, he's like, well, let's try it at 8 ounces and see how he does, since he did so great on 4. So I did the 8, and then he started doing like weird tick things, repetitive behaviors. And so it was just too much for him, and we dialed it back, and then he was fine. And that is one thing about the camel milk. So kids react differently to it, but there's, kind of a lot of them have the same responses. So it will actually kind of do different things to different kids. But the good thing is it's all reversible. Even if you have a few negative symptoms like hyperactivity or, things like that, the tics like my son did, it's all, you just change the dosing, even though we don't say dose because it's not a medicine, it's a food. Change the serving amount, and it's all reversible.
So I know people are going to ask, so Christina, do you drink camel's milk?
I didn't drink camel's milk early on because it was so precious and so expensive that I didn't want to take a supply, but I did test it back then. One day after he'd done so well, I was like, maybe I'll try it. So I drank some, and I got this weird head brain sensation, which was shocking, amazing. Like it was very interesting. And I was like, this milk was very powerful stuff. So I always save it for him over the years. But then when I found out a few years later that Amish men in America had started milking camels, I said, I'm going to get some of that finally and see how that works. So I gave it to my son, and it worked to help him as well. So then I was like, the floodgates are open. I don't have to risk my supply anymore, because I'd gotten a government permission to bring in the other camel milk for him. It was still very expensive. So basically I started getting that milk And now that that's so common, I have it all the time. It's the only milk in my house anymore. And I drink camel milk just about every day when I'm home.
So backtrack to that. So you got government permission to bring in camel's milk.
Yeah, I'm camel crazy. I'll do that. Like having worked in like large institutions like the Pentagon and aerospace and stuff, I know that things that can't happen at a lower level, if you make a good case for it at the higher level, it's sometimes possible. You just need to not give up easily. So yeah, I had a friendly person that was helping me get it in through LAX, but you know, when you are working in the government, you have to make sure your chain of command is good with things. And so I was told to check headquarters, and I did not want to check headquarters. I wanted things to stay the way they were, but I luckily met I didn't meet them, but I, spoke with wonderful people in Washington, and I got medical letter that I needed and all the documentation, and it was approved. So
just
yeah.
amazing. That's amazing. And I'm sure there's plenty of parents out there right now that are thankful, so very thankful that you started that adventure, because there's many people that are reaping the benefits of all of your hard work, your diligence, your intuition, and your go-to-edness to make that happen. It's pretty impressive, Christina.
Well, thank you. I think sometimes I look back and think, if only I had never opened my mouth to ask that question, if only, what would I be doing now? But it's really all about helping people. And so back then, when I did, find out that finally I had an American source, I did write my first article, and it went viral and kind of set off the new camel milk industry for this purpose around the world. And then I wrote a second one, which is a science article, peer-reviewed medical journal article, and that got some science attention, and it's now been cited, I don't know, a dozen times. So it's good to know that if we do our due diligence, even if we're just, I hate the phrase just a mom. I think it's very patronizing and sexist and all that. But even if we want to say you're just a mom, if you do the right thing, do the due diligence, you can really help a lot of people and change things.
Absolutely. And so in this book, so to put that out there, yes, you can now look at scientific references, and there's some scientific papers on camel's milk and the benefits. But this book goes through not only the science, but it's such an amazing story of transformation and how it came to be. And it is heartwarming, and it really is. And it's an easy read. It's a good read. There's plenty of resources in here. There's not only dosage recommendations, or not dosage, I should say, but serving size recommendations and some things you might see or may not see. There's also resources where you can get it, because I know that many of you are probably thinking, well, where the heck do I get this? Do I have to ship it from another country? And no, there's actually some here in the US. And on that note, Christina lives near me here in Laguna Beach, and because we are right now in our environment, I don't know when you're watching this recording, but we are during the COVID craziness right now, and we're all on our stay-at-home orders. And poor Christina had her book launch, and she had a book tour going on, and many of those, I guess, sightings or whatever, they were canceled, so she wasn't able to attend them. But she had a bunch of camel's milk from Camelicious, which this is a powdered camel's milk, super cool. So I met up with her to get some, because My Spectrum Heroes is going to have a giveaway. We have 2 boxes to give away. These retail at almost $100, so really pretty amazing. So we're going to do that giveaway, and I'll talk more about that in a second. But the funny story is that since we're doing all this social distancing, and Christina and I are both very responsible adults, we kept our social distancing. I met up with Christina in a parking lot where she left the trunk open, and the camel's milk was in the trunk. And then I approached in my car, and I came over, and I got my camel's milk, and then I walked away, and we did not come within 6 feet of each other. It was very, very social distance-esque. And it was very funny, because I got in the car and I looked at my boyfriend. I said, if I had to explain to someone, like, what are you doing, ma'am? Why are you going in that person's trunk and then getting into yours? And I would simply say, oh, I was just getting a camel's milk exchange. I'm sure that would have caused some controversy. People would have been like, what did she just say? So it was a fun adventure. It was pretty interesting. But on that note, if you are interested, not only if you get the book, there's a bunch of resources in the back to tell you where you can get them. And it wasn't just a couple of places. I was actually very surprised to see how many places there are now from when Christina started this and not being able to find any and having to go to great lengths to get it. Now there's quite a few resources for this. I think that the powdered version is pretty amazing, right? It comes in a little packet, very convenient, super easy. You just add it to, look at that. Isn't that cool?
I'll show it to people because sometimes they like to see it. How cute is
Isn't that so cool?
Nice,
like
little
super easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So super easy. So we're going to have a giveaway on social media. My Spectrum Heroes is going to donate two boxes for a giveaway, and we'll tell instructions. You can go to the My Spectrum Heroes Instagram for instructions on how to do that. There'll be some tagging involved and all that. And you can get a free box to give it a try. Because I know that after seeing this, people are going to be interested and want to give it a go. There's been many beneficial properties shown in camel's milk, and we all know that cow's milk and the typical dairy milk that we are exposed to has high levels of toxins and inflammatory markers and steroids and hormones and all these things, and we know that our kiddos are sensitive to it, whether it be the lactose or the casein or whatever, and we don't seem to have that with the camel's milk. So why not give it a try? Give it a small amount, and I mean, listening to Christina's miraculous results that she got with her son. And I've seen many others since then, many blog articles written about it, many parent testimonials. It seems like a very exciting, nutritious, good thing to try. And I know I'm biased as a nutritionist, but I always think the very first thing we should be looking at is our food supply and the nutrients we're giving our body and the things that can help actually heal the body and let the body do what it's meant to do, right? It's pretty amazing how it can do that. So this is an amazing story. This is an amazing mom. Christina, thank you so much for all you've done bringing this to the world. The book is amazing. Love it. Highly recommend it, you guys. Camel Crazy. Christina, why don't you go ahead and tell them where they can find this book and more information about you?
Terrific. So I'm also pleased to say that the book just won the Nautilus Book Award. So I'm pretty psyched about that. And all those lonely years with the camel science and my camel nomad friends, and those weren't lonely, those were fun, but I'm glad to see that the value of their lives and their experience has been recognized with that book award. So you can get Camel Crazy anywhere books are sold. Barnes & Noble had it on their tables, must-read nonfiction. You can get it at Target website, but of course Amazon has it, or your local independent bookstore. And if you go on my website, ChristinaAdamsAuthor.com, there are some buttons you can push to choose, where you want to get it. And for our international viewers, you can get free international shipping on Book Depository. So that's on my website, ChristinaAdamsAuthor.com. And then you can follow me at Christina Think on Twitter. You can catch up with me on Instagram and Facebook at Christina Adams Author. And I'm just happy to hear from you. My heart goes out to all my Spectrum friends and people in the health community. And I'm just really grateful for your attention for Camel Crazy.
Thank you so much again, Christina. And for all of you that are watching this currently at the beginning of May, you can go to the at My Spectrum Heroes Instagram to get information on how to get a free box of powdered camel's milk from Camelicious. Again, thank you, Christina, and bye for now.